everyone, it's Amy here and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm excited to be sharing with you guys my review, swatches, and lots of comparisons of the new Violet Voss and Laura Lee palette that is going to be releasing. I am so excited to get my hands on this palette. I've been so in love with Violet Voss the last couple months, from the Holy Grail palette to the highlighters and now to this collaboration. So they did a sneak little release to this. They did the same thing with the Holy Grail. Like, they tend to do these little tiny limited quantity releases really quickly a couple weeks before the official release date. So she announced it on her Snapchat that I saw, so I ran, got the palette, and then like Trend Mood and everyone started posting. So a limited quantity got these palettes several weeks early. The official release date will be on June 10th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, I believe. I will leave all the information down below, and it does retail for $45, which is similar to the other palettes. So instead, all the other palettes had a black packaging. This one has white, and on the back you have Laura Lee's picture, and it says, "Hey guys, thank you so much for being a part of this palette with me. I've worked so hard creating the perfect go-to palette with a little sass. This palette is a dream come true, and I couldn't be happier with the outcome. I hope you enjoyed as much as I do, Laura Lee." So I love Laura. She has such a great channel. I love her accent, so unique and cute, and she's so southern and adorable. So I love her channel. So I was super excited to get my hands on this because of her and because I love Violet Voss as well. And then another thing that was super cute and cool, which I knew from the Snapchats since I follow her, is that she was signing everyone that got the limited edition a picture of her and like the information on the back and like the hashtags to use when you get the palette and all that. She signed a picture for everyone that got the limited quantity, the first little set of pre-order. So I think that's super cool. I'm so glad they did not put it on the actual palette, because you guys know these palettes get so messy really quickly. So I'm glad they didn't put her signature on there, but that's really cute and cool, and I'm excited. So let me show you what the palette looks like, and then I will show you swatches, and then I will show you a comparison between all three palettes, the Holy Grail palette, the Drenched Metal palette, and this one, because you guys are probably going to think some of them are similar, which there's only one shade out of all three of them that I think is like almost identical, and then there's probably 3 shades from this palette that's in each of the other palettes that I think is kind of similar, and then everything else is completely unique. So this is the same exact layout and the same exact palette style as all the other ones. The only difference is it kind of has this like brushed feeling right here, as if they almost painted on Laura Lee on the front and the back. Otherwise, the size of the palette, the texture of the material, the mirror, everything is exactly the same, and you get 20 eyeshadows like you do in the other 2 palettes. Now this one is probably most similar to the Holy Grail in the sense there's a mix of mattes and there's a mix of shimmers and foiled eyeshadows, whereas the Drenched Metal, I believe, only had 1 or 2 mattes, and then the rest were all those shimmery foiled eyeshadows. So I think that's nice. She created a palette that is, you know, all around kind of like all looks you could do, whether it's mattes, shimmers, combinations, and things like that. I do have it on my eyes today. Today I just kind of went for like more of a natural look because I'm filming lots of videos. But I had, I think, Press Pot on the crease. Then I went in with Fried, which is kind of this mustard color. Then I went in with Tickled Pink, a little bit of Sugar in the inner corner, and then I did Bubs in the crease and underneath the lower lash line, and smoked it out with Fried. So I definitely will be doing a look for you guys in the future. If not this week, then the next week, hopefully, fingers crossed. With all the videos I'm filming, it's hard to like film tons of eye looks and all that, but I want to keep doing more of those for you. So I'm going to try to create a look with this for sure. But again, this is what the palette looks like. Let me zoom you up close so you can see a little bit closer what they look like, and then we can get to swatching. So this is what the shadows look like. I think they're mostly warm tones, but I like that she put neutrals and champagnes, and you have some reds, some greens, like gold. Like, there's a nice little mix of colors in here. So let's go ahead and swatch probably a couple at a time. So these 3 shades right here are Basic, which is a really nice shade to set your primer on your eyelid and just start off with. Also good for highlighting underneath the brow bone. Then we have Sugar, and then we have Press Pot. So there are the first 3 shades in the palette. And then over here we have Mama Bird, Ragamuffin, and 1988. Now I think these 2 matte shades right here will not swatch that well, but they perform a lot better with a brush, just so you know. So there are those 3 shades. These next 3 shades are some of my favorite in the palette. We have Biddy, Hissy Fit, and Tickled Pink, which I have Tickled Pink on my eyes today. Look how foiled and beautiful these are. So gorgeous. So gorgeous. So there are those 3 shades. The next 3 shades are Larlie, which if you're a fan, we're Larlies. Then we have Fleeky. And then you have Britches. And Larlie is kind of a duochrome one. So there are those 3 shades. You can see how it's got a duochrome kind of gold and pink finish. So in these next 3 shades, this one's probably my favorite matte in the palette. That one is Fried. Then we have Yoshi, and then we have Rammer Jammer. So there are those 3 shades. Look how gorgeous this matte shade Fried is. I love it. So moving on to the bottom row, we have Alabama, Whiskers, and Bubs, which are really, really nice matte shades, perfect for the crease and like the lower lash line. So there they are. So the last 2 in the palette, this one is my absolute favorite shade out of the entire palette, and when I swatch it you will see why. This one is Smashly and this one is Lou, which there's always kind of one dud in the palette, and for the last 2 palettes it's been this black shade, so this one is not that great. Oh my god, you guys, look how amazing that one is. And then look how weak this black is. This one is the worst in the palette and this one is the best in the palette. I love it so much. Alright guys, that was a close-up look of the palette in swatches. I think some of the best ones are right here in this row, these foiled ones. They say they're all shimmer and matte shades in this palette, but I see there's a distinction between like Sugar and Larlie are more like shimmery satin shades, whereas these are more like straight up foil shades. I've said it in my other reviews, which I will leave a link down below to the other 2 originals because this is still the same great quality, is that these feel very, very similar to like Natasha Denona or Makeup Geek foiled eyeshadows. I'd say that the ones that are kind of like the shimmery ones feel very much like the duochrome ones from Makeup Geek. And the mattes to me feel a little bit like Morphe, where they have a little bit of a dry consistency, but they do blend really easily. Now I think the mattes that are kind of in this section are the best. They have like a little bit more of a thick, silky texture, whereas these ones up here are a little bit drier, if that makes sense. They still all work really well. The only one, like I said during the swatches, that I don't like is the black shade, which I didn't like in the Drenched Metal palette either. I just don't think it performs that well, but the rest of them are really great. I love it. I love the formula. It's just like all the other ones. So now let me go ahead and show you side by side compared to the Holy Grail and the Drenched Metal, and I'll show you the ones that I think are a little similar. So here are the 2 palettes side by side. Right here we have the Holy Grail palette, and right here we have the Laura Lee palette. And right off the bat, there's some shades more like the matte and the lighter shades that look a little similar, but the ones at the bottom are totally different. So in this palette, this is the one I'm talking about that I think there's almost an exact dupe of each other, and the rest are just a little similar. So the first ones I'm going to show you that I think are pretty dang like close as far being a match and maybe being a duplicate would be Hissy Fit from Laura Lee and Toffee from the Holy Grail palette. So let me swatch those for you. So here are the 2 shades right here. This one right here is from the Holy Grail palette, and that's Toffee. And then this one right here is Hissy Fit from Laura Lee. So now we've got Laura Lee, and then we've got Holy Grail. So yes, they're not exact dupes. Like this one's a little bit more orange, that's a little more golden, but this is as close as they're gonna get, that these are almost identical shades in the palette. Now as far as some of the matte shades that I thought looked similar, this one right here is Ragamuffin from Laura Lee, and then this one right here is Hashtag from the Holy Grail. So we have Holy Grail, and then we have Laura Lee. So you can see that the Hashtag from the Holy Grail is a little bit darker orange, and this one is Laura Lee, but they're still kind of in that same orange family. Alright, so right here we have the Holy Grail palette. This one is Teddy Bear, and then we have Whiskers from Laura Lee. So this one is Holy Grail, and then we have Laura Lee. So you can see that Laura Lee is a little bit darker brown, but yet again they're in the same kind of family. And then right here we have Cranberry Splash from the Holy Grail palette, and this one is Rammer Jammer from Laura Lee. So we have Holy Grail, and then we have Laura Lee. You can see Laura Lee is a little bit more intense, but yet again, same family. Alright you guys, so that was a little comparison between the Laura Lee and the Holy Grail palette. I'd say out of the three palettes, these two are the most closely related as far as like the color scheme and the color family. As you guys saw, there was really only one exact color from each of the palettes that really matched. There's a couple that are in the same family, but they're not identical. So there's a little bit of similarities, but there is differences. I wanted both, obviously, as a makeup addict and a Laura Lee fan, but I do think there are some differences, but at the same time, there are some similarities, that there's warm tones and champagnes in both these palettes, but then you have some that are totally different. So it's kind of just your preference whether you think you need it or not, but there are a little bit of similarities. So now let's move on to the Drenched Metal palette. So here is the Drenched Metal palette compared to Laura Lee. Obviously this one has the most significant differences just because this one's mostly all shimmer and foiled and only has 2 mattes in it compared to this one that's a mixture similar to the Holy Grail palette. But there are a few shades in here, 2 or 3 that I think are a little bit similar, but there's nothing that are exact dupes. So now I'll zoom you up close and show you those. So right here we have Come Through from the Drenched Metal, and then we have Sugar from Laura Lee. So we have Holy Grail, and then we have Sugar. And these aren't identical. You can see Sugar has a little bit more orange in it, whereas Come Through is a little more yellow. But from far away, they look a little bit similar. Alright, so here we have Kisses from Holy Grail, and then we have Tickled Pink from Laura Lee. So we have Holy Grail and Laura Lee. So you can see Laura Lee is a little bit more kind of champagne-y peach, and the Holy Grail is a little bit more champagne and pink, but yet they're a little bit similar when you're kind of far away, and they have a very similar texture as well. So the last two that are similar are the not so great black shades in the palette. This one is the Holy Grail palette, and this one is Laura Lee. Laura Lee has a little bit more of a gray undertone. You can see that the Drenched Metal actually has a little bit more pigmentation to it, even though neither is really that great. Alright you guys, so that was some swatches and comparisons between the Laura Lee palette and the Drenched Metal palette. I think overall I'm still super happy with this palette. I think it's up to the same quality as the other two. Really impressed by Violet Voss in general. I'm really excited for Laura Lee and her collaboration. And then if you already have the Holy Grail palette, you honestly will just have to ask yourselves if you think it's worth it, if you think you need both, if there's enough differentiation. If you're a super big makeup addict like I am, then in my head I'm going, duh, I need this, even though I realistically probably don't. But that's why I ended up picking up this palette as well. So I'm really happy with all 3 palettes I have and the highlighter palette, and I'm really enjoying this palette so far, and look for an eye look tutorial coming in the future. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe so you can stay tuned to all my upcoming videos, and I will see you guys very soon.